Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Talking Business with Dr. Sandra. This is another sunny Saturday morning in South Florida, and I'm so happy to be here with you. Now, today we want to talk about a very essential topic. It's leading with compassion and empathy. It's not the type of thing that we talk about a lot in business, because business leaders are supposed to be tough. They're supposed to know it all. They're not supposed to show any emotion, of course, unless they are angry. But we know that there is another way. And the professor in me likes to start with explaining the terms, breaking them down. So what exactly is compassion? What exactly is empathy? And for good measure, we will have to throw sympathy in there as well. Now, when we are exercising compassion, what we're actually doing is we are showing an emotional response to what we perceive to be suffering in another individual, and we're doing it with authenticity. Okay, so basically we're seeing that somebody's going through something, they're suffering, they're in pain, and we are feeling for them in a very authentic way and with a desire to help them. Now, empathy, on the other hand, is the ability to understand and share in the feelings of another person. It's like walking in their shoe. I empathize with you. I understand what you're going through. While sympathy is about being able to acknowledge that someone is suffering, going through a loss or pain, and we can share with them that I feel for you. I'm sorry that you're going through this. All right? But they're quite different. And I'll use some examples to explain the differences, because you can sympathize without being empathetic, or you can sympathize without being compassionate. So for example, if a member of your staff is having a personal issue and having a very hard time dealing with their workload because something is happening at work, you could realize that something is going on, and you could say to that employee, I'm sorry for what you're going through. If you know that they have probably lost a loved one, you could say, I'm sorry for your loss. However, if you don't go beyond that, then you would be showing sympathy. And that's fine. However, being compassionate goes a bit further. For example, you hear that somebody is feeling a little bit under the weather, and you inquire to find out what's going on, and you realize that they're really overwhelmed with all the projects that they have working on and the deadlines that they have to meet. And as a leader, you actively listen to this employee, listen to the concerns that they have, and you present them with a solution, an alternative, so that they can cope. So a suggestion could be, we'll adjust the deadline, or I'll find someone else who is able to assist you with this so that you can meet that deadline. That's being empathetic. That's showing empathy. Compassion, is you seeing that somebody is struggling. They're going through a crisis, and you not only express your concern, but you take action we definitely take action. And so we want to be focusing on compassion and empathy, because these things can really make a big difference in the organization. You know, if a leader goes beyond sympathy and shows empathy and compassion, then you find that your employees will feel value. They will feel that there is genuine concern. And I always say that employees are more than their titles. They're more than their job functions. You bring your whole self to work with you. So an employee is a mother, a sister, a wife, a friend, a grandmother, a son, a husband, a brother, a grandfather. And so you bring your whole self with you to work. You're not just your job title and what you do at work. And we want to recognize, acknowledge, and honor the whole person at work. And so our responses as leaders should go beyond just feeling sympathy. I am sure that some of you listening may feel that sympathy sometimes is even in short supply, and that's a shame. That's really a shame. Now, let us look at some of the examples of leaders who have stepped out of the mold of being just tough and arrogant and knowing it all, and have embraced compassion, and they have embraced empathy. And then I want to start by talking about Indra Nooyi, who was a renowned CEO at PepsiCo back in the days. She was known as someone who cared deeply about her employees, and she developed strong personal connections with them, and she was very much interested in their well-being. And some of the key things that she did while she was there, I smile as I think about how she would actually write letters to the parents of some of her key executives, just thanking them for having raised such a wonderful human being who is contributing so much to the world and so much to PepsiCo. Imagine that. You're getting a letter from the CEO of the company where your adult son or daughter is an executive. Imagine the feeling, not just for the person getting the letter, but also for that executive. And she was focused on personal connections, work-life balance, way before it was fashionable for flexible work arrangements. She was supporting maternity leave policies and so on. Health and wellness, she transformed PepsiCo's product portfolio, focusing on healthier alternatives and options. I remember her launching the Performance with a Purpose initiative. She was very key on diversity and inclusion, making sure that minorities were mentored and such emerging leaders were seen and recognized, and there were programs to benefit them. She was also very transparent with her communication, and she wasn't afraid to share with the staff when things were tough, when they were going through difficult times, and everybody needed to know what their role would be and what would be required of them to bring the company into the desired future. And her focus on social responsibility, investing in the community. She was very key in driving sustainability initiatives. And what did this do? What did this do for PepsiCo? For one, employees were more motivated, they were more loyal, the turnover was much less, and it drove sustained company performance. I mean, the years that she was leading the charge at PepsiCo, the company's performance increased by leaps and bounds. I also want to talk about a man, because persons may feel that, it's women leaders are the ones who are expected to be compassionate and empathetic, and not so much our male leaders who are expected to be tough. And that's not necessarily the case. Let's look at the case of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. He was a well-known CEO at Microsoft in the mid-90s, and I recall a story that made the headlines that he and his wife, they were expecting, and unfortunately when their son was born, Zane, he had cerebral palsy, and that meant that he would not be able to communicate, he would not be able to feed himself, and so on. And he shared it openly with the staff, the pain that he was going through, that his wife was going through, the family was going through. He did not hide it, and it humanized him, and it actually changed how things happened and how they did things at Microsoft. Before that, Microsoft was known as a know-it-all culture, and he changed that to a learn-it-all, going from a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture. What he also did, know that he had a child with special needs, he was able to dig from a deeper place, and he could see the needs of persons who had a disability. And what this did at Microsoft was that they were able to invest in products. They invested in research and came up with products that would benefit people with disabilities. They came up with an Xbox that had an adaptive controller for people with disabilities. And the whole corporate culture shifted to a gentler, softer culture. He also encouraged emotional intelligence in his leaders. He promoted active listening, trying to understand what team members were going through, what their perspectives were on certain company matters, and this led to a lot of wonderful things happening at Microsoft. It improved employee morale big time, innovative products, and significant financial growth to Microsoft during that time. And I share from my own story. I recall one of my employees lost her father, and she was very close to her father, and she had just gone to see him, a couple of weeks back, and he was in another country, and when she got the news that he had passed, and the pain, and I thought about it, and what could I do? How could I respond in addition to just saying I'm sorry, or sending a card, or sending some flowers? And I know we do that a lot, but sometimes the employee they'll be thankful and appreciative of it, but it may just seem like the wheels of the organization spinning and doing its thing. It's the executive assistant who is ordering the flowers and sending the card, and they probably wonder how genuine is all this. And what I did, at the time, I had just started to learn Spanish, because I had about 4 employees who their native language was Spanish. And although they're quite fluent and write very well in English, and I thought that I wanted to be able to communicate with them in Spanish, and so I was learning Spanish, and I thought of writing to her in Spanish, expressing my sorrow at the passing of her dad, and sharing with her my own experience, losing my dad. I was actually there in the hospital with him a couple of minutes, and as I left the hospital, I got a call that he had passed, and I had to go back and, see all the first rites being taken care of by the nurses and the attending doctor. And I shared all of that in that letter with her about, my understanding of grief and how I dealt with it, and that I was there for her, and I sent it off, and that was it. And I never gave it much thought afterwards, but I must tell you, when she reached out to me, the emotion, with that she shared, how happy she was when she got that letter, and the fact that I took the time to write to her in her native tongue, that really touched her, and she said that she appreciated it so much. I mean, she said that this is the nicest thing that anyone had ever done, and I share that to say sometimes it really does not take much for us to lead with compassion and to lead with empathy. No, you may be listening and you may be thinking, but I'm not a leader. This is not for me. These are for the persons who have the titles, And I want to say to you, everyone can lead and everyone can be a leader. You do not need to have a title to be a leader. It's not the title that makes you a leader. And if you want to learn more about this, there is this wonderful book about leading without a title that I would suggest that you get your hand on. It's written by this gentleman, Robin Sharma. And Robin Sharma is one of my favorite writers. He is also the person who wrote The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Wonderful read, but I digress. If you think that you're not a leader, and so this episode is not really for you, I'm telling you that wherever you are in the organization, you can show leadership qualities. You can lead even if you don't have a title. Now let's look a little deeper into why it is that empathy and compassion in leadership is important. Why is it that we should cultivate these traits? And what are some of the practical things that we can do? First, as simple as it sounds, I think one of the hardest things to do is to really, really listen. Active listening. Active listening is one of the most important things that you can do to show compassion and to show empathy. If you want to show genuine interest in someone, whether personally or professionally, you want to listen. Allow them to talk freely. And as leaders, and I'm talking about the leaders with the titles, sometimes we're so accustomed to being in charge and talking that we can get quite uncomfortable with silence. Yes, we can. And when you are talking with someone and you realize they're going through something and you're trying to get them to open up, do you want to talk about it? How can I assist you? What's going on? Ask the question and shut up. Give them time to find their voice. Especially, there's a power distance. It's not going to be a conversation that probably would be easy for them, especially at this time. So ask the question. Show genuine care and concern. And if they're not ready to talk, that's fine, but be comfortable with the silence and allow that person to find his or her voice. I think that's one of the best things that you can do. Another thing is to encourage feedback. An environment, a work environment that encourages feedback is an environment where empathy and compassion is seen in action. encourage people to tell you how they feel. Create a safe space. Create a safe space for individuals to be vulnerable. They don't have to feel like they have to have it together all the time. If they're overwhelmed with work, if they're going through a difficulty, they should feel that where they operate is a safe space emotionally and psychologically for them to speak to someone in confidence if that is what they want. Somebody who will genuinely listen to their concerns. Another thing that we can do as leaders is to put training programs in place. We can't assume that persons will automatically know how to respond. As a matter of fact, sometimes as leaders, we don't know how to respond. If somebody is overwhelmed, they're going through a difficulty, they probably break down crying. What do you do? And I suggest that companies invest in workshops and programs that will enhance emotional intelligence among leaders and staff in general. So one, they are aware, they have awareness of when something is off, when a team member is probably not at their best and experiencing something, and they are able to assist because now they will have the skills that are necessary. We just can't make assumptions. Now, why is all of this even necessary? Why not just continue the old way, leading, from a space of, I'm in charge, you do what I say, you're at work, I don't care about your personal issues. Why is it important for us to, as leaders, to take compassion and empathy on board? The fact of the matter is that, the research is clear. The research is clear. Employees actually feel much better, more valued in organizations where leaders are compassionate and empathetic. The research shows that 50% reduction in employee turnover is reported in companies that their leaders practice emotional intelligence, which again, compassion and empathy, are fruits of being highly emotionally intelligent. Now, 50%, that is not a number to scoff at all. As HR persons, we know the cost of turnover, to attract, to go through the recruiting process, to train, onboard a new employee, and hopefully they stay. So if we can reduce turnover by 50%, I think every company should be thinking of investing in training programs to ensure that our leaders are being compassionate and empathetic. Another piece of data that I find quite interesting is that companies that have caring leadership, those organizations outperform their counterparts that don't by over 20%. Now, if you can add 20% to your bottom line, 20%, that's a big number, to your bottom line by having leaders practicing compassion and empathy. My God, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you do it? So it's not just a nice to do. It just makes good business sense. Now, having looked at the why for the business, let's look a little deeper into what it is that is happening in the organization among the employees when we lead with compassion and empathy. Why is it that it matters? Why does it matter for leadership? And I dare say that the benefits are so great that it would just not make sense to do otherwise. When we lead with empathy and compassion, we build trust in the organization. Empathetic and compassionate leaders, they show that they genuinely care about their team members' well-being. And you all know what it feels like when you feel that somebody genuinely cares about you. They're interested in you as a person. What's going on, in your personal life. And it's not just all about the company. It fosters engagement as well. Employees are more likely to be engaged and motivated when they feel that they're understood, that they're heard, and that they're supported by their leaders. It also enhances collaboration. A compassionate and caring environment, it encourages more open communication between team members because they feel a lot more comfortable. They don't feel that you're gonna bite off their head for the simplest thing, and so they feel safe. They feel safe to express their concerns and their ideas. That's a wonderful thing. So if we look at the key points that's coming out of this conversation, I think what we're saying is that compassion and empathy are vital for modern leadership. I think the old style of leading is not going to cut it in today's workforce, and it's not costing you anything to do it. As a matter of fact, these soft skills, I think, would serve us very well. And when I recruit for the C-suite, and I'm looking at the skills, what is it that we're looking for in these potential leaders in the organization? We want to ensure that we're using our psychometric assessments and so on to find out can they bring these emotions to the table? Can they feel? Can they be compassionate, and can they be empathetic in the organization? Because we know that it leads to employee satisfaction, it leads to engagement, and even at a higher level, it can lead to employee inspiration, which is what we're all. That's the goal, eh? That's what we're all striving for. And then customer loyalty. Customers want to see that you are treating your employees well, and I think by extension, it flows over into how your clients and customers are treated. They feel it, they sense it, And I've been talking a lot about what's happening in the organization, but when leadership is also caring, compassionate, and empathetic with the external customers, not just the internal customers, but those who are buying your products and services, your suppliers and so on, other stakeholders. Even when you're having difficult conversations, you're having tough negotiations, there is still a place for empathy and compassion. And the real life scenarios that I shared with you, I deliberately did that so you can see that this has worked. Indra at PepsiCo, Satya at Microsoft, my own story that I shared, of how writing a letter in Spanish to my staff member, how that impacted her in a very, very positive way. So in concluding, I think what the takeaway is that leading with compassion and empathy, whether you are a leader with a title or you are someone who is embracing leadership without a title, wherever you find yourself in the organization, you can lead with compassion and empathy. Thank you so much for joining me this Saturday morning. I hope you found today's episode insightful and informative, even inspiring. We can all become better versions of ourselves, irrespective of where we are on that journey. So bye for now, until next week, and stay tuned for the message from our sponsor, Above or Beyond. Thank you. As usual, it was a pleasure.
In the dynamic world of business, reaching new heights requires innovative thinking and expert guidance. Welcome to Above or Beyond, where your vision meets our expertise. We bring over 70 years of combined experience and a proven track record in transforming challenges into opportunities. At Above or Beyond, every step we take is guided by a commitment to excellence. At Above or Beyond, we're not just business and management consultants. We're your partners in achieving the pinnacle of business success. Visit us at aboveorbeyondjm.com. Email us at info@aboveorbeyondjm.com or call us at 954-361-1745. At Above or Beyond, the goal is excellence.
Who wants to be a millionaire?